A reading from the book of Wisdom. The night of the Passover was known beforehand to our fathers, that with sure knowledge of the oaths in which they put their faith, they might have courage. Your people awaited the salvation of the just and the destruction of our foes. For when you punished our adversaries, in this you glorified us whom you had summoned. For in secret the holy children of the good were offering sacrifice and putting into effect with one accord the divine institution. The word of the Lord. This is the scripture that I read today in Mass from Wisdom, chapter 18, verses 6 through 9. Wisdom, aka the wisdom of Solomon, who was known as the wisest king of the Jews. In fact, probably the wisest man in the history of mankind. And you can see I got ChatGPT to make a little background for me with Solomon and his golden temple. It's hard to really see it, so let's see if we can, little thumbnail there, you can get a better look at it. So ChatGPT, I think, did a pretty good job. It's a nice representation of Solomon and his golden temple. So Solomon is the author, the writer of the scripture today. And I think what he was obviously recounting the first Passover. The Jews were in Egypt at the time, being held as slaves, held captive as slaves by Pharaoh Ramses II. And, you know, the typical oppression of slaves, and they were praying for a long time for release and rescue from the Lord. And the Lord told them that at that night, the angel of death was going to pass through where they were in Egypt, and that to save, the angel of death was going to take the firstborn of every house that it passed across. And to make the angel of death pass over your house, you needed to sacrifice a lamb and take the blood of the lamb and wipe it on the door of your house. And that would be the sign for the angel of death to pass over your house and not take your firstborn. So that night, miraculously, the angel of death passed over the homes of the Jews, the Israelites. Did not pass over the homes of the Egyptians, and took the firstborn of all the Egyptians, including the firstborn of the Pharaoh Ramses II. And this was one of the last plagues that the Lord sent, visited upon the Egyptians to allow them to let his people go. And so the next day after Passover, the Lord led Moses to lead the Israelites out of captivity, out of Egypt for good. So this is a story about the Lord rescuing his faithful people and punishing his people's enemies. So that brings up an interesting question for today. Some people believe that you should pray for your enemy's destruction, that you could and should pray for your enemy's destruction, as the Jews did in this scripture, in Wisdom. Others, by the same token, are not comfortable with that, but they think you should pray for your enemy, for your enemy's well-being, as Jesus taught. Those seem to be at odds with each other, don't they? Like a binary choice, like this or that. It's either you pray for your enemy, pray for his well-being, or you pray for his destruction. I actually think that you can do both at the same time. And what I mean by that is, I believe that you can pray for your enemy's salvation, God's mercy upon your enemy, and forgiveness of their sins, forgiveness of their wrongdoing, and at the same time pray that their plans against you are thwarted and that God comes against them and their plans, and leave it up to God as to what magnitude that needs to be. If it's destruction, then so be it. That's God's call. But I think you can pray for both. The Lord has mercy and forgives your enemies, but at the same time, because you are one of God's people, that he uses his power to come against the wrongdoing, the evildoers, the wrongdoing of your enemies against you. So, that's a good question for the comments today. I'd love to hear your thoughts about that, about which you feel comfortable praying for, one or both, or neither. And one more thing today is the debate about the final phrase in the scripture, the divine institution. What does that mean? Some say that it's the institution of Passover. And it says that the scripture says that that the Jews, their sacrifice, all as one, as a community, at the same time that night, is what put into effect the divine institution. And so the people believe that what that means is it was such an earth-shattering event that the Lord destroyed the Egyptian empire, basically, and saved his people, the slaves, the Jews, and pulled them out of captivity, that it was big enough. That was big enough event to commemorate and remember that every year, and institute that as a ritual, the Passover for the Jews. Other people, I think that makes sense. I agree with that. And other people say that what this means, what the divine institution in this scripture means, is that it was Abraham honoring the covenant that he made God honoring the covenant that he made with Abraham and saving the Jews from disaster, from captivity. And that was one of the promises he made Abraham, is that I will not forsake your people, your descendants. And so I think that also makes sense, that God was honoring the divine institution of that covenant. So tell me what you think. Put your thoughts in the comments. Please like and subscribe. That's what I have for you today. And you have a blessed day.